Good afternoon and the warmest of welcomes to today's iOB business webinar. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on here. My name is Ben and I'm the resident business coach here at iOB Business. Okay, so getting started with today's webinar session, we are just moving over the 2 o'clock mark. So we are welcoming everybody into the webinar. Welcome to those of you that are on here just now. So we're just waiting for a few more people to join before we get kicked off for today's webinar session. Now, before we get started, if you do have any questions for us on today's webinar, please do feel free to ask them. You can do so in the gray Q&A box at the bottom of the screen there, and we'll get them for you at the end of today's webinar during the Q&A segment. We run that for about 5 minutes or so. Always wonderful, always a couple of questions answered. Okay. So any questions that you do have, please feel free to ask them. Now, don't worry about getting left behind in today's webinar session. We're going to take a brief pause in between each of the 3 webinar topics to give you a chance to ask away with any questions and indeed jot down any notes you may wish to take as well. All right, so whilst we're getting set up, I'm just going to go ahead and switch off my video camera and I'm going to pull the presentation that we have for you up on screen there today. And in just a moment's time, you should be able to see the presentation and you should no longer be able to see my face. But if you could please confirm for me very kindly that you can see the presentation up on screen in the chat box and you can also hear my voice, that would be fantastic. And that I would know that we are ready to rock for today's webinar session. That would be much, much, much appreciated. All right, fantastic. Looks like we're good to go. Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for that. So let's get started then. 3 key questions about startups answered by a business coach. Now, that business coach would be myself. My name is Ben Porter Smith, and I get to do things just like this every day, talking with wonderful people about wonderful business topics. I genuinely enjoy it, and my forte is helping small businesses grow to help them achieve stability and growth. Okay, so moving on to today's discussion points, what we're going to talk about. Number 1, where do I find clients? Okay, where do you, as a business or a prospective business owner, where do you find these clients? We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about how you can establish a good relationship with prospective clients. We're going to talk about how you can begin to find clients throughout your business journey. Number 2, when should I hire team members? Okay, we're going to talk about when this is a naturally good step for you to do in your business to help you continue to grow. And finally, how do I advertise my business? A huge question and one that I'd be more than happy to answer for you on the 3rd and final topic of today's webinar session. So beginning with topic number 1, where do I find clients? Let's get started then. So firstly, okay, you need to become absolutely clear on your service offering. You need to become abundantly clear on what it is that you do, okay, how much you sell it for, what you give in exchange for that money. In other words, how much do you give for the money, for the service, for the fees, all of these kinds of things. We need to think about them because we need to be on total clarity when it comes to understanding what we need to do in exchange for whatever fee it is that we're getting. Okay, so if you are a service provider, as digital marketing agencies, you are classed as service providers in the digital marketing field. So what do you need to do in order for the fees to come in, and how do you deliver it? All right, so you need to become abundantly, absolutely clear on your service offering to make sure that you understand who it is that you might be looking at signing as clients and what type of services it is that you might be looking at selling. Okay, so there's a few factors that we can include as we go throughout here. So let's talk about what they are. Number 1, what you offer. Okay, what is it that you do? Okay, now, astoundingly obvious question. Yes, I agree, but it's something that we absolutely need to clarify to make sure that you are confident when you're talking with prospects. And furthermore, when you're creating advertising and marketing materials, when you're trying to get prospective clients, prospective customers interested in your business, this is something that we need to be absolutely clear on. So what is it that you offer? So some examples for you. As a digital marketing agency, you might offer SEO services. You might offer paid advertising services. You might offer social media services. You might offer software services. Okay. Now, second thing we need to clarify, how much of it do you offer? All right. Now, how much is really defined by, well, what are you giving in exchange? Right. So what we don't want is a random price point that's never really calculated and changes between each client and each customer. That's fine if you have a formula or a method that you're following. But in essence, what we need to establish here for consistency and understanding our cash flow better is to make sure that we have good clarity on what it is that we're actually selling and how much of it we're actually going to give in exchange for the money that we are going to receive. So if you are running paid advertising services, for example, do you set up one campaign? Do you set up three? Do you set up five? Do you do it on one channel or two or three? What does that look like and how do you structure it? Okay. You will get asked these questions by prospective buyers. It's very, very important that you are able to clearly and concisely answer this question to give confidence in your service, in your product to the prospective buyer. So how much of it you offer is very, very important in exchange for how much. Now, next question, and these will become more clear, okay, to become more clear as we move throughout these questions. So each question, as you answer it, the following one will begin to make more sense. So who you serve. This can really only be clarified if you know what you offer and how much of it you offer. Okay. Then we could begin to think, who is that person or that business that I'm going to sell to? And this again becomes more important because we need to be able to identify your ideal target market, your ideal client, the type of person that you want to speak to. Okay. Are they a business owner? Do they have a particularly wealthy business, or are they a small business? Are they an early business? What is it that you're looking to achieve here? Okay. And who do you serve? Why do you serve them? Okay. What is the purpose in what it is that you're going to do? Are you running adverts for them so that they can get more sales, more customers in their restaurant? Are you running promotional services to get brand awareness out for them? You need to be aware of who you serve and why you serve them. Okay. Now, final point. How much do you charge? Okay. Now, this is an absolute golden question. Okay. And a big one, if you're struggling with how to answer that question for yourself, do a bit of reverse calculation here. Establish how much money you would like to or need to earn on a monthly basis. Divide that by the amount of clients that you can handle at any one time. And there's your price point. Okay. So let's say that you needed to earn £1,000 a month and you can serve 10 clients in any given month. That would then mean that you need to charge at least £100 per client per month. All right. So once clarity has been established, you can understand who you want to reach out to and what messaging you can include. Now, to clarify an earlier point, you can't charge what you want if it's not justified in the price. Okay. So whatever you're going to do, make sure that it's market wide and it's justifiable. All right. So you don't have to be exactly the same as your competitors or other people in the market. Make sure that you're reasonably close if you can. But more importantly, make sure that it is a justifiable cost. All right. So you couldn't charge, say, £10,000 to do one social media post. Okay. A ludicrous example, but a good example nonetheless. Okay. So, well, you might find a market that you could charge that to, but in my opinion, very, very unlikely. Okay, so what we're looking at here is understanding what is reasonable. So say if somebody wanted you to manage their social media, maybe between £300 and £500 a month is a reasonable charge for that. Okay, reasonability within the market. So once clarity has been established on the above points, you can understand who you want to reach out to and what messaging you can include. Okay, so once you know who it is you're talking to, that's a big point. Second big point, you then know also how to speak to them because you can start to get into the mind of the consumer. What do they want to hear? What do they need to hear? What problems can I solve for them? You'll also understand demographics and where you would be likely to find your ideal client. Okay. If you're looking, say, from a demographical perspective, say you were looking at businesses that were earning over £500,000 a year, for example. Okay. You'll begin to understand these points better. You'll begin to understand if you had any sticking points in advertising and marketing and anything that you needed to overcome. All right. So that brings us to the end of topic number one. Any questions, as always, are more than welcome. Thank you for the questions that I have so far. I'll answer them for you during the Q&A session at the end of today's webinar. It's going to run for a few minutes after we are finished with this conversation for today. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a brief pause on. Okay. And it's going to run for about 30 seconds or so. It'll just give you a chance to catch up with any questions and indeed jot down any notes that you may wish to take as well. And I will speak with you again in just a moment's time for topic number two. All right, fantastic. So let's move on to topic number two. When should I hire team members? Now we're running through some of the biggest questions that I get asked as a business coach, and we're answering them for you. So when should I hire team members? All right. Now, rarely would hiring team members be an immediate part of a business startup. All right. Now, this often happens when demand is outweighing supply. Okay. So typically, you will find that when a business starts up, it tries to keep costs fairly low, okay? Keeps costs minimal where need be. So they will use often more cost-effective software. They'll think about running their business in a very cost-effective way, which often does not necessarily include hiring full-time in-house team members, for example, okay? Now, what you might wish to do, which we can talk about, is things like outsourcing. You might wish to outsource certain parts of the business at very, very, low cost where possible, if possible at all. Okay. And we've got to look at what these types of options are to make sure that they're effective and viable for the business and that are going to make sense for us in the short term and indeed, of course, the long term as well. Now, why would you begin to look at hiring team members? Typically, this begins to happen when the demand is outweighing the supply. All right. So in other words, you're getting too much work in and you yourself cannot handle that volume of work. It's a very, very good problem to have as a business. And it's a problem that can be easily solved if you know how to strategically hire the correct team members for the roles necessary within the business. Now, here's the key part. It has to happen before you should start bringing in team members. The business has to be able to show a sustainable level of income in order to afford the salary. Okay. Now, what's always worthwhile doing is making sure that you have several months of that potential new salary banked and not necessarily going to be used for anything else relating to the business over the coming months. Okay. So let's say we give this a 6-month figure. We say, right, well, if you want to hire somebody with a salary of £2,000 a month, plus your other expenses, of course, when it comes to hiring team members, if you're going to do it in-house, you need to make sure that you have at least 6 months of this salary. Okay. Now, this is something that I would suggest. This is my opinion. There are different opinions and different ways of doing it. This is the way that I believe is safe and viable for you to do so. Now, if you brought somebody in on a 3-month probationary period, you have the cash there available to pay them for the 3 to 6 months. And if you're happy with the probation, the business was still doing what you expected it to do, cash flow wise, you can sustain that long term. Okay. Now, what you've also got to make sure of is that the business is consistently earning over and above what you would need to pay this new salary, because what you don't want to happen is the salary and all the other costs begins to come out of the business, okay, all the other costs associated with hiring an in-house employee, okay? You don't want that to then start impacting the business on a severe level financially, where the business can now not afford its other operational, necessities because it's too busy paying the salary, all right? Now, you must very much make sure that the business, say, for example, if you're going to pay £2,000 plus expenses, the business really wants to be making an excess of, say, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 a month. Okay, well over and above what the new salary is, so that you can very comfortably afford the new salary. And it's not a kind of, oh, okay, if something negative happens here, we're not going to be able to afford that salary. All right. So you've got to make sure, A, the cash flow in the business is very, very high and well above what the new salary is. Okay. And of course, covering all other expenses and then some. And you've also got to make sure that you've got 6 months worth of that salary banked and you don't need it for anything else. Now, in-house isn't the only option for people to join your business. Okay. You also have freelancers, virtual assistants, and contractors. Now, to run through each one of these, freelancers are often experts in specific fields that will help with specific things. So say that you need a graphic design expert, you might consider hiring a freelancer. Virtual assistants are generally available to help with administration tasks, help the business keep ticking over, and generally fairly, reasonably, it depends what, relative to what cost, but typically they are considered to be generally lower cost as an option to help with administrative tasks. And contractors will work on, as the word explains, a contract over a certain period of time to get a specific job done. Okay, so if you need something done and it's a 3-month project, typically a business would put out a contract and say it's going to be a 3-month contract, we're going to pay this much money over X amount of time, or indeed in one lump sum, however you wanted to do it. And this is the job that needs done, or this is the task that needs to be completed in exchange for that money. Now, all three of these can typically be cheaper, more cost effective for the business than just straight up hiring in-house. So it's something that businesses do consider, especially in the early stages. Now, the business must be able to sustain a certain level of financial expenditure without return before hiring additional team members. As we discussed, it would not, in my opinion, be a wise decision to bring somebody on in the hope that they would then start generating more money for the business. Okay. Now, crucial point here, the necessity of the new team member needing to generate new money for the business is going to be the negative part, okay? It's absolutely understandable to say if you hire somebody in through sales or, for a sales role, then you would expect them to make more money for the business, of course, because they're in a sales-based role. However, the business cannot rely on this additional income that does not yet exist in order to pay the salary of the person coming into the business. Your business must be able to sustain that. Okay, you must be able to sustain that new salary as you previously discussed, even without any additional money coming into the business. All right, so the business must be able to sustain a certain level of financial expenditure without return. Okay, now without return here is a crucial part. You must be able to pay that salary regardless whether the business starts earning more money as a result of this new team member joining the business or not. Okay, so very, very, very important point. Now, there must be a thorough assessment of the required job specifications before engaging in the hiring process. One of the biggest mistakes I see as a business coach is businesses hire for specific roles, but they haven't clarified what they actually need that person to do. And through this clarification, you often find that actually the job's a little bit different to what you thought it was. And it's actually filling in different areas of business that we didn't actually notice previously needed, filled in or occupied. Okay, so let's say, for example, your business is lacking marketing creativity and you sort of believe that maybe there's a lack of sales, due to this, and you hire a marketing expert, okay? And you realize actually marketing wasn't the problem. The problem was that we didn't have anybody closing sales well enough. So you actually needed a salesperson, okay? So you can highlight mistakes like this by being a bit more thorough, but primarily, you need to define what the role is and all inclusions of the role. So let's say that we're hiring a sales executive. Well, we need to clarify then what time we would ask them to be at work, where we would ask them to work, if it was at the office or at home, how many hours they're going to be working for, how much are we going to be paid, any breaks that they got, any holiday that they got, what their specific requirements are. Okay, now there are often, things when it comes to employment that would include phrases such as, at the discretion of management and things like this. Okay, so if an additional task that wasn't necessarily in the job spec needed done, we do include that sometimes just to make sure that, it's okay to ask for additional tasks to be completed. But typically, we need to fully clarify every single task, every single expectancy, everything that we would need done within the job role. Okay, so there must be a thorough assessment of the required job specifications before engaging in the hiring process. Please, 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 please make sure that you do this, because this will massively reduce any staff turnover within your business if you hire for the right role. Okay, so that brings us to the end of topic number 2, and I will be giving another brief pause just to go ahead and jot down any notes and indeed fire away with any questions, and I'll see you again in just a moment. Topic number 3. All right, fantastic. So moving on to the third and final topic of today's webinar conversation. How do I advertise my business? Okay, big question and one that I'd be more than happy to answer. So begin by outlining the mission and branding of the business. Okay, we're talking about advertising your business here. Well, we need to be clear on what the mission, the purpose, the goal of your business is, and indeed the branding of it. Okay, now the reason for this is largely to create consistency amongst your advertising. Okay, if we have, we're constantly chopping and changing the colors that we use, we're constantly chopping and changing the fonts that we use, it becomes difficult to recognize the business, as it were. All right, so some of the most memorable brands that do you find them constantly changing their logo or their branding or their colors? No. Okay, that's because they want to create brand consistency so that you can see them advertising anywhere and you recognize that that is them and you know what they do. Okay, it's brand recognition, it's consistency. So it's very, very important that we get to do this and we get to understand it. Okay, the mission of the business, what are you there to do? Are you advertising on behalf of other businesses to help them get more money, more customers? Are you growing website traffic, by way of SEO? Are you, creating an amazing culture throughout certain businesses? All right, what is it that you're doing? Okay, very, very important to highlight the mission and indeed create brand consistency. Now, branding colors, fonts, and overall messaging should also be clarified. Okay, overall messaging, we need to remain consistent here. So what is the personality of the business? Who is it that you're speaking to and how are you speaking to them? Are you a more casual business? Are you very, very, sort of professional business? Are you very, very much, kind of straight to the point? Are you, trying to have a little bit of fun with the advertising? whatever tone you begin to use in the messaging, try and maintain consistent with this tone, because it can throw customers off again if in one piece of marketing content you seem very, very casual and you're just having fun. And in another piece of business content, you seem very, very serious and very, very professional. Okay. Now, that's not to say that you can't be professional when you're being casual and having fun with your advertising, but there's just a good way to define each way of doing it. So some businesses are more serious, in other words, kind of serious, super professional, super serious. And we have, other businesses that are more casual. They like to have fun with their marketing. Okay. Now, not to say that those businesses aren't professional, but there is just brand messaging that's going to be taken across here in different ways and understood differently by customers and clients. Okay, so whatever messaging you choose to use, make sure that you remain consistent with it throughout your marketing campaign. Okay, now decide on a budget for your advertising and marketing based on the current resources within the business. Often, this will be clarified with how much spare money the business has each month. Now, typically, advertising or marketing in general should be approximately 10% of turnover. So if you were to establish a budget, your turnover, say, was £3,000 a month, you would then put to £300 a month marketing budget. Okay. And you spend that on whatever it was you were going to do. Now, one thing that I can always recommend is that you always advertise. You should be advertising daily. Anytime you have a spare moment or you find yourself with nothing to do, advertise. Talk about your business in as many ways and many places as you possibly can all the time. Always be advertising. Okay. Decide on a budget for your advertising and marketing. Now, it doesn't have to be 10% of your turnover. Okay. It can be whatever makes sense for you financially, but please make sure that you are doing something, even if you're not paying for ads or doing any of that kind of stuff, but make sure you're always promoting and always advertising your business. So the budget will vary business to business. Some people will have £10,000 a week. Other people will have £10 a month. Okay. It just depends on where your business is. So figure that out based on the budget that you have and establish what it is that you can do marketing wise and budget wise. Now, finally, assess the skills required for each type of advertising. Okay. Such as social media, organic and paid advertising, blog writing, so on and so forth. Okay, so if you have a skill or a talent for creating paid advertisements, you probably wouldn't need to pay anybody to manage those ads for you, okay, because you could do it yourself. So all you're paying is the advertising cost. All right, so typically when somebody hires a paid advertising agency, they're paying both for the people implementing the work and for the advert itself. Okay, so you could save money there. Now, let's look at other things like social media, okay? Organic social media is free. All you need is an internet connection and a device that you can access social media from, all right? So look at things like this. If you're a particularly gifted writer, you can create blogs, you can write articles, you can create content pieces, so on and so forth. So you have to look at what your personal skills are. Are you a great writer? Are you a great speaker? Are you a great motivator? Are you very creative? How can you access these skills and talents and use them to market your business? All right. So this was an overview of how to advertise your business. Of course, there are specific questions that can be answered, when it comes to how do I run a Facebook ad or how do I set up a good social media campaign? Okay, things like this, but there are more specific questions. So we covered the overall brackets there really of advertising. Okay. So that brings us to the end of topic number 3. And in just a moment's time, we'll dive onto the recap after we've taken another brief pause for any final questions and notes. And then we'll do the Q&A session. I'll see you again in just a moment. All right, fantastic. So let's recap on today's session. And number 1, become clear on your service offering. You must know what you sell and who you sell it to and how much you sell it for. Number 2, hire when it's sustainable to do so and not before. And decide on a budget, plan your strategy for marketing based on your skill set, your talents, and anything that you believe you can do effectively. Okay, so as always, a massive thank you for taking the time to attend today's iOB business webinar. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. If you would like to talk to a member of our team, you can head over to iob-business.com/talk-to-us, and you can book a call at a time that suits you. Okay, so you'll see a calendar like this when you follow the link, and I'll leave that up on screen for you there. And I will go and get today's Q&A questions. All right, great. First question, and a really good one. I don't have a marketing budget at present. Okay, so the answer here, no problem. Okay, assess an affordable portion of your business income that you could spare for advertising and go from there. Okay. Now, whether that's £10, £50, £100, £300, whatever that figure is, establish what can be achieved for this level of budget. Okay. So let's say that, you had £25. All right. Well, for £25, you might be able to go and purchase some flyers. And with those flyers, you could then go and drop them through door to door, drop them through businesses. Okay, whatever makes sense for you, but please do and try and plan a budget. All right. Now, number two question, and I hope that helps. I hope that was a good answer. It was a fantastic question. So I hope that that was valuable. Next question. Advertising seems to be so expensive. Yeah, okay, absolutely. It can be, but it doesn't need to be. All right. You should always be working towards a healthy return on investment. Okay, ROI. So what you've got to think about is, well, is whatever you're spending the money on, worthwhile, because it could be classed as expensive, but typically people class things as expensive when they don't return. So, if I asked you, is £1,000 a month on advertising expensive, you might say yes, but if it was bringing £2,000 a month back, I then think it would open up a different conversation as to whether it was expensive or not, because it's, returning double what you're spending. Okay. So again, fantastic question. Thank you for that. And I very much hope that that helps. Do we have any more questions from today? No, looks like that could be it. All right. Well, as always, a massive thank you for taking the time to attend. It's been a genuine pleasure. I look forward to seeing you again on the next iOB business webinar. Take care and bye for now.